Roisin, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. I've been watching your work for, I guess, the past couple of years, really, since I have become more politically awakened because of October 7th. I suppose in a past life I would have been, but my political awareness definitely would have kind of been in the background in recent years as I was raising a family and working in marketing. And I think the shock to our system after October 7th and being able to see on our phones the absolute brutality, the brutality, um, it left no room for ambiguity. And the awakening, it's kind of like a rupture of old ways. And in that kind of moment, there's this grappling to try and make sense of this reality that you didn't know existed, is what I felt like. Um, and it's been a journey, but I think ultimately I've come to a place where I only try to understand things within a frame of imperialism and its impact on the world. And it's it can be a lonely road. There are, there's people in our movement, but it can be a lonely road because the more committed you are to learning about it and really, really doing the research, because it's easy to kind of just see things black and white. Um, you kind of see this is not the narrative that's in the news that we are digesting on a daily basis. This is completely at odds with the conditioning I grew up with. This is the total opposite of the world I thought we lived in. I would have had a sense, of course, a little bit, of course, about imperialism, but not to the degree that I did witnessing the events of the past couple of years. So I found your page in the midst of it all. And here I saw this fierce woman. And I mean that in a good way, Roisin, like we were saying before this when we chatted, it's like I sometimes when I read your posts, I'm like, I get triggered. Not so much lately, but in the beginning. I give you the example of the media reform one because that's where I suppose that was my area of focus in this because I study journalism. I have a master's in journalism. And you had put up a post about, I suppose, the futility of trying to reform something that is operating exactly as it is designed to operate. And that's true. And, it took me a while to process it, and I did. And you're right, But first, I found it really hard. And anytime you post something where I have that reaction, I have learned that I need to give myself a bit of time and I need to process it. And invariably, it will ring true. And for you, I think that can't be an easy place to always have to be the one to be like, I'm not cushioning this. I'm not cushioning this for anyone's ego. Because I guess ultimately, like my reaction, my trigger, it was my ego. And you're not pandering to anyone's, you know, it's not consciously my ego. I genuinely thought that reform was possible. You know what I mean? It wasn't, but of course it isn't. And of course it's operating in the way it's supposed to be. But yeah, in terms of your position, and the organizing you do on a personal level, do you feel supported within a network? Do you feel sometimes that you're shouting into a void? What does it feel like for you at the other end?
Well, I've been following you, Audrey, only October 7th as well. So I think we are finding our tribe in many ways. Like when we think about all the horrible things that have happened, maybe we need to also consider the good things that have come out of this, which is clarity. And clarity is painful because I'm not dissimilar to you, Audrey. I didn't come, I wasn't born an activist. I was born into an unjust system and I lived maybe in slightly different times and a different environment growing up in the north. So there was no getting away from oppression, and British imperialism was on the streets. So it was
Yes.
much more visible to us, even though I wasn't directly involved in a Republican movement or anything at all. I just was witnessing it. I was a victim without realizing I was a victim, really, until like my mother's from the South, and she's like, this isn't normal.
Yeah.
And often I would hear her and my father talk about rearing a family in the North. I don't think she particularly liked it, but that was where the work was for my father. He's in the building trade, and living in Dublin was not an option for us because Dublin was always
Yeah.
expensive to live in, and it's
Yeah. Dublin.
now. But so it is low. Like I think there are certain things that trigger you in your life. Things happen in your own reality that make you respond to injustice. Many things have happened. I've witnessed many things, whether it was the British Army on the streets stopping us and harassing us, or when we were going out, if they identified you as a Catholic, you were automatically pulled in. Those things, but I didn't really respond in a proper way, I feel now. I'm not saying I regret that. I just did what I could within the means that I had
Yeah.
and the knowledge
Yeah.
that I had. So it took a lot of learning as well. And you're a mom and you have 3 kids. And I have to say that once I became a mother, everything changed because the selfishness is just left aside. You have no choice. And then it became survival mode in many ways.
Yeah.
It depends on you to survive, and you must stay well to keep your child alive. And then you realize that you're staying alive for another human being. This is about future generations. So that triggering effect of seeing images of children
Yeah. Me too.
probably was exacerbated by the fact that I had a child and held a child and fed a child, struggled with breastfeeding, and then you think of women who can't produce milk for their own babies. So yes, there's the emotional tug. And then I realized, like, if I looked too much at those things, it actually disabled me from
Yeah.
the activism of looking scientifically now at what's happening and the material reality.
Yeah.
So that's not easy as a woman. I'm not saying that men don't have those feelings either, but it's not always easy to detach your feelings from being able to step back and analyze it through the anti-imperialist lens.
Yes. Yeah. I can totally relate to that. Being absolutely, I like, we can all relate to spending time on our phone, absolutely bawling, crying in the first few months watching that footage and seeing babies, seeing children, seeing all kinds of human beings just being absolutely annihilated on our screens. And having to step back from that and asking, what is happening? Why is this happening? Why is no one stopping this? You know? Um, and it's that, once you start to unravel that, you can't unsee it. There's no going back. There is no going back from what you learn along the way. And today, the world, I think, it's increasingly chaotic because, we hear people talk about late stage capitalism. And you can just see the erratic behavior of the US empire. Just at the turn of the new year, kidnapping the president of Venezuela, uh, Iran ready to strike any moment. A really kind of unhinged department renamed the Department of War. There's so many fronts to this. The Syria, the ICE, like even domestically in the US, the violence that's being imposed on its own citizens. And you will then watch a program like I did last night, only for a while because I had to tune out. And you'll see a country politician like Michael Healy-Rae saying to Sinead Gibney, but sure, what else will the people of Iran do if the US don't step in and help them? And you're just thinking, Jesus, after everything we've seen, after everything we've seen, we still think the US is the savior. And he was there with his hat on him saying, the Ireland and the US has a great relationship. And, and then you'll see articles from that. Is it Fionn Sheehan in the Independent? I might have his name wrong. And he spoke. He was scolding the government for not taking our position in the EU seriously. All we've got from the EU, and how it has supported us with the infrastructure and farming and all of that, and we shouldn't be voting against Mercosur. And you're just kind of like, and then you have a huge amount of the population tuned out, apathetic. And then you have a really, I suppose, disenfranchised working class who are just disconnected from political reality. They're like, you know what, this political leadership, it doesn't represent me. I don't see myself reflected in it. I don't see an option for me to kind of be involved. And you see what happens with that kind of when people are disenfranchised, they kind of, what I would observe is being victim to lunatics on the right, like the likes of Steve Bannon and Elon Musk and those agitators that tell them that their problems are being created by immigrants and it's kind of like trying to get some coherence out of all of this chaos. I mean, how do we do that? Like in Ireland, we see political energy happening around the Palestinian movement. We saw a wave of support for Catherine Connolly in her election. There is opposition growing for the government, but it seems like really scattergun. It seems disjointed. And I don't know, are we connected around a focused issues, what do you think of that in terms of that,
I
disjointed?
agree.
Yeah.
It seems scattered. I mean, when you think of Healy-Rae or whatever saying the like of that, I mean, that's the ultimate betrayal of the Irish people, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Mm-hmm.
though he presents himself as a great Irishman. So whether or not, I mean, we could debate whether or not he understands imperialism, but we'd be wasting our time because he's only a puppet at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So he's saying what's going to serve his little small interest for the time being. It's a short-term personal interest that he has in staying relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Begs the question about how much faith why do we continue to look to politicians for the answers?
Yeah.
And when you are, if you're representing, if our allegiance is to the working class, which we always state in our
Mm-hmm.
group, we need to think about why the working class can't get organised. And I think a lot of
Mm.
the time it's to do with being disenfranchised, but also a lack of confidence. And that lack of confidence will not remedy itself, and it will not move into a state of confidence if we continue to tell each other that we need to appeal to the politician, we need to write to the politician, we need to
Yeah.
face in the opposition. And at the same time, Audrey, like I've had this conversation. I'm very lucky that I have good mentors, people
Mm.
lived experience and involvement in the struggle, in the militant struggle in
Mm-hmm.
Ireland and in the north, but also comrades who have come from other countries who have been actively engaged in fighting imperialism physically,
Mm-hmm.
and who are learned and much more well read in revolutionary theory than I am. And it's that
Mm.
curiosity whenever they be speaking to me and trying to teach me and bring me along that has led me to say, well, I don't want you to just tell me what's in the book. I need to read that book. I need
Yeah.
to read Lenin. I need to read Marx. I need to um, unlearn what everybody has told me about Stalin as well, and the Western version of um, the success of World War II and how fascism was defeated. Because
Mm.
I studied history as well,
Mm-hmm.
college, and I teach history, and all of the textbooks will tell you that only for the US coming along and supporting Britain and France, Hitler would not have been defeated. And it completely, writes out the fact
The
that
Soviets.
the
Mm.
Soviets made such a huge sacrifice. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I would argue now that they were the main reason why fascism was defeated in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So once James Connolly said the same thing over 100 years ago. The only thing,
Yeah, he's
not that was wrong with the working class, but he noticed the problem is that we have no confidence in ourselves because we're constantly placing our trust in
mm-hmm.
perceived leaders who actually don't have any power. Yes, there's leaders, great people who inspire you, but leading us.
Mm.
So if leading us down the road to liberal democracy, which is about reform, well, then that
Yeah.
isn't transformation. And we're seeking transformation. We believe
Mm.
in a whole new world. And
Mm.
you'll never hear, the system under which we are subjugated referred to in its factual sense. The factual
Mm.
word for the system is called capitalism. But even the opposition in
Yeah.
Leicester House won't use that word. We don't talk about the regime here and what
Yeah.
capitalism is. There's an avoidance. We use other words like neoliberalism or the liberal left as well.
Yes.
But so if we're more confident about naming the culprit, which is capitalism, which explains why I would be triggered, why I have fallen into despair, why I have struggled in my own life to pay the bills. I'm a victim of capitalism. I,
Yes.
you know, it doesn't look like it's bleeding because I'm surviving and I'm a wage slave and I can keep the roof above my head. So it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
look overt, but we're all victims of the
Mm-hmm.
same system. But it isn't just necessarily a black and white choice, like you said, Audrey. It's
Mm.
not about do we take to the streets and reject the ballot box, or do we place our trust in the ballot box and say, demonstrations, acting, shutting it down, protesting doesn't work. I think it's a combination of both, but it's
Mm.
how we continue to organize and realize that yes, the ballot box will get us so far, and inevitably, Audrey, we need a
Mm-hmm.
different government. We're not
Yeah, we
in
do.
a state of revolution, we're preparing for revolution.
Mm. You, as you were talking, Roisin, like so many kind of things were clicking into place for me. Primarily around what you said about confidence and about, how James Connolly said that it's the confidence to use the language and the words directly. And that's what you have. That's what I see that you have. And it is rare for people to use the right language in the right places because ultimately we are conditioned not to do that. Um, and to be considered or to risk ostracism for, there's bounds of socially acceptable political debate and conversation, isn't there? That we have all been conditioned to kind of live within, and we're breaking out of those bounds now. And we're preparing, as you said, we're in a state of kind of flux, I guess, Um, and I find myself constantly having to break through discomfort to say things as I mean and want to say them because I know how it's going to be perceived because I was that person, who was conditioned and who would have viewed certain languages. Whoa, that's way too much. That's not allowed. That's nuts, and it's gaining that confidence and it's gaining that the certainty is there for me now, but I think, yeah, for that to happen on a mass scale, I don't know what's going to take, because I don't see uh, enough class consciousness, I guess, or anti-imperialist analysis or thinking in some of the movements, in the movement for Palestine, which I think is probably, if we were ever going to en masse understand, recognize, identify, and fight against imperialism, surely it would be because of the awakening we've had. And then we start to see it elsewhere. We start to see it at home. Like I had a conversation with Tomás McConamara. We spoke about how we were conditioned in the 26 counties, even the terminology of the troubles, like the language of that, like don't trouble yourself with that. They're just making trouble up there. Like it's not a war of independence like it was when the IRA were down here. The horrible framing and language, and then you learn about the censorship of Sinn Féin and the IRA during the Troubles, and then you kind of go, shit, it's right here on my doorstep. Why did it take Palestine? And then there's so many layers to it, and I sometimes I think people are ready to see it, and sometimes I think that I guess I still think I soften my language for delivery.
Do you
And
think
I think
also, yeah, I think that's also a condition because as a woman, we're
mm,
supposed to be more tender and soft and respectable. Like, I mean, that's also coming from the Western notion of what a good girl. You know, at school,
yes.
good girl. I don't know if
Hmm.
you went to an all-girls school. I did for a while,
No.
convent school. You know, good girls sit a certain way. Good girls wouldn't
Yeah.
do that.
Yes.
You know, I'm a bit old, a good bit older than you, but so
I don't
that was
know.
very, very much in the culture
Mm,
of the schools. So it happens within the education system, but not to make it about, gender. It happens
mm,
in school.
mm.
From the first moment you set foot in school as a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, and now even earlier because children have to go to childcare, which is outsourced beyond the home. So there are rules and there are boundaries.
Mm.
And like, I'll never forget the day that I went to the childcare nursery to collect Patrick. He was only 2, and he was in the on the naughty seat
Oh,
at
oh, I
2.
would. No, 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 no. I would lose my shit now if I saw that.
It's
Yeah,
very upsetting, but this is normalized.
it
There's a
is. Yeah.
naughty step. I mean, you have all those nannies on the TV telling how to discipline. So this is part of, as you say, the conditioning. This is, getting people ready to obey the rules. What for, ultimately? So that they
Mm,
comply in the workforce, so that they are
yes.
compliant workers in a
Hmm.
few years' time. And the work
Hmm.
ethic, if you work hard, do your homework, that will equate to success. It's an investment.
Yes.
It's not an
Yeah.
investment even for society. It's an invest in yourself. It's very inward looking so that
Mm.
you won't have to deal with poverty as if poverty is a sign of your failure.
Yes. This is the central message. This is the central message. You're not a go-getter. You're not a winner. These are the messages that we take on. And we all have the same 24 hours in the day. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And it's a very, very brutal and compassionless uh, and kind of anti-community type of a culture that we're living in. And of course, you'll see exceptions to that, but in the main, that's what it is. It's like, and you can even see it in like trends with psychology. It's like boundaries, cut people out. It isn't, you're not preparing people for conflict or to have a difference of opinion or, to normalize it. It's like, cut them out, go your own way. Do you know? It's
Well, are
like,
you tired of that toxic friend who, so just get rid of, just detoxify your life of
yeah.
those friends instead of, like you say, living side by side with people who we really disagree with and might even dislike. But we have
Hmm.
to. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about
Mm.
fascism.
Exactly. But you see
Like
it in things
those
like that.
people, yeah, no. These people, yes.
Yeah. 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 And it's kind of like it all adds up to, I suppose, isolation, really. And I think, the power that's in community. There is so much power in community. And if community was left to its own devices and left to organize its own resources and its own kind of economic and material welfare and interests, how much better off we all would be. um,
This is
but
sovereignty that we're talking about.
this is
If you don't
sovereignty.
have a sovereign brain, if you are not
Mm,
allowed to critically think for yourself and dissent
mm,
and disagree, whether that's in the classroom, whether that's in your neighborhood, in the workplace, well, then you don't have a sovereign brain. Your brain's, it's a colonized brain. The brain
mm,
starts to adapt to that colonized way of thinking. And if we had communities, like you say, that were independent from
mhm.
these bigger structures that are suppressing us, that are,
Yes.
we think, well, if we get things in our community, whether that's a bin or a park bench or a playground or whatever, that's not liberation. That's getting
No, we settle.
on the
We,
council
s-
terms, somebody's
we s-
pacification, actually.
It is, and we settle for so little. I had this epiphany during the summer. I met the loveliest mum in the playground. She had her kids with her, and I had my boys, and we got chatting. And she had an older, not older, the girl was, I think she was maybe 6, and she was autistic, and she little boys same age as mine, and they were all playing away. And she was telling me about the struggle that she had to get services for her autistic daughter. And my God, did she have a struggle and a fight on her hand? And she had to fight for everything she got. And like really, really tough and waiting for a place at school, not being, she couldn't work because she can't get the care, she can't get the support. She's had to move location, she's had to physically up and leave her house to move closer to where there were services for her girl. Um, and she, one thing she said, it really just kind of stood out in my mind. She said, she named a local Fianna Fáil TD, and she was saying, it wasn't he great? He got me on a list, and eventually the list got me a place, and thank God. And I was like, I couldn't. I was just like, but sure, if it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be a list. He's voting on the policies that have created and deprioritize, or sorry, created these conditions, deprioritize social protections that should exist for your daughter. We're paying for it through taxation. We're paying for the sorry, we're paying for the loaf and they're giving us crumbs and we're saying thank you. We're saying thank you. And it was when I saw her have that gratitude for him and genuinely, I guess, not putting it together that he's actually the reason, and all of his politics and what he believes about how society should be structured is why your girl couldn't get her place, and she's thanking him. And I'm thinking, just like what you said, we're still colonized in our minds, and we're kind of, thank you, thank you, thank you for that. I'm
When
really
you're
grateful.
desperate, you'll do desperate things. Your
Absolutely.
own child, like
Hmm.
whatever it takes, you don't want to deny them whatever essential service they need to just survive, never mind flourish.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah. I
understandable,
just,
but
oh,
if
it's totally understandable, but I'd love to see her say
if
"fuck
it's
you" to him.
behaving, I know, but you see, you need a community to do that, to offer
Mm,
something else. It doesn't have to
hmm.
be this way. We can
Mm,
provide and we can build. Of course, everything is owned and controlled now, and they have compliant people inside communities, small
hmm.
community groups, residence groups. So that's why it is so hard to organize, because when you do trying to organize on your street or in your area or in your workplace, usually there's a compliant person put into a position who's going to toe the line. So it's
Yeah,
whether or not you're prepared, like you said, Audrey, to take the hit and be that thorn in the side, be that
yeah, it's
little
hard.
there she goes again, to keep
Yeah,
speaking up instead of going, I'm not going there. They're all, inevitably
yeah,
going to be this. We have to keep being in the spaces where we're not wanted. Now,
yeah,
tone, like I have to say, I get a bit passionate, and maybe that isn't the best way. When you get angry, it can be put people off. It can, scare people off. But I think that I've gone through that phase of going, I'm not going to that. You all know what the outcome of that meeting's going to be. Whereas if we go in a calm state and say, I mightn't get the mic, but I'll ask a question and I make my point. And
Yeah.
we're there as educators and leaders in our own right. We're not being given the mic or the platform, but at least we have a voice, and we need to use our voices so that there will be people who will be too afraid to say what we're thinking.
Yeah.
And they'll
Yeah.
be glad. And then you move on and you move on. And then you start to build a group, a society, organize. That's how but the organization won't happen if we avoid the current structures either. There are structures in place which can be used. Like look at how the issue of neutrality has come up at local council level. I wouldn't discuss that, you know, if you're completely anti the current system, you might say, ah, to hell with that. I don't have faith in that, but it's a mechanism to raise awareness and to create a transformation, maybe a rupture, or to create clarity amongst and to hold the politicians to account. And sometimes they're only realizing, oh my God, this is working. So it's to
Yeah.
bring those along and not assume that those people who are in positions of perceived power are actually leaders. No, they need to be led. Who's going to lead them? Sometimes they'll be our spokespeople. Sometimes, you know, they'll let us down. They're just interested in clientelism. They're just interested in a vote. They're very fake, a lot of them, you know, that are in government at the minute. But not every person who's in an opposition party is a bad faith person. You can see it,
Yeah.
tell it. You can tell when you meet some of these
You
people.
can.
As
Yeah.
long as we don't relinquish and go, they're going to sort it out for us.
Yeah.
No, we're
Yeah.
going to sort it out for us. And we
Yeah.
utilize them as tools in this cog, which requires a lot of patience. You can't, a revolution isn't throwing stones or setting things on fire. What will that change? It'll create destruction. But unless you know what is actually going to change, and you must, you know, you don't, we don't have a crystal ball to go, this will change. But you must plan out, if this happens, plus this happens, then this is the likely outcome. There'll be a few different outcomes, but this is the outcome where we're working towards. So there's no point doing anything, marching on the street, go to an empty Leinster house. What's the outcome? The outcome
Yeah.
probably is that people feel better for doing something
Yeah.
in themselves, but that's the individualism coming in, and we shouldn't really be promoting individualism, hyper individualism. We should be saying it's going to be a bit uncomfortable. We might need to be educating. We might need to be going to that local community meeting, which is nothing to do with Palestine, which is to do with, I don't know, dog poo on the streets or
Yeah. Yeah.
not a place.
Yeah.
We might need to go there. Not very glamorous, but we need to be.
We need to be present and have a
We need
voice
to be
there. And you
present.
know, what's like the good part about that, you know, since I've become active, I have met people in my own community that I didn't know previous to that, you know, from marches and stuff. And we are doing stuff like that. Like, you know, a good friend now that I have made, her children go to the same school as mine. She was only living down the road, and we've become good friends through all of this. And it's great because now that we're politicized together in our tiny bubble as well. And we're, you know, when things happen, we connect on it and we're talking, okay, let's do this or let's do that. And it's like, you know, having fun with it as well, because you can, do you know, it's like be good cop, bad cop. It's like, no, they're fucking sick of me. I'm not starting again. Or, do you know, that kind of way? Like, because I had to bring up something with it was actually my son's communion. I sent an email and I asked, could they say a prayer for the children of Palestine at the mass? And I got a really condescending email back about basically, you know, we can't just single out Palestine. And I was, oh my God, I can't describe the rage I had. And I was like, absolutely not. So I ended down in the parish office and, kicking up a stink. And in the end, got a mass said for Gaza. Now, look, people have all kinds of opinions on the Catholic Church. I'm not a churchgoer myself. Like, that was, I suppose, that's where it started initially. But it brought a lot of people into the mass, and we were able to create a mass totally around Palestine. And an awful lot of people who weren't tuned into it, that was an entry point for them. So it was very important, because then they started to ask questions, even my own extended family, because it was just, yeah, they didn't know the extent of the amount of people killed, and it kind of opened up their hearts, is what it did. And yeah, like those kind of little impacts in the community, they do have these ripple effects. And when you start to do that in your own territory, where it is hardest, because everyone knows you, your doorstep, um yeah, like sometimes I feel like they probably think, oh, here she comes again in her kafia. Or, what's wrong with her now? Or I do sometimes think that, because I was one of the fucking yummy mummy, whatever, like good girl, like, just earning my good wage and driving my nice car and doing all the things you're supposed to do. And now I'm not that. I'm not that person anymore. And it's no exaggeration to say that it's a stark difference. It was me before and it's me now. And I struggled with that in the first year, maybe. And now I've come round, as in now I'm like, I would have been very triggered before if people weren't seeing it as I was seeing it, because I was so distressed by what I was seeing on my phone. I was so distressed, and it was very raw, and it was kind of, um, but now I suppose maybe I've integrated it, or I found ways to empower myself to do something that I can kind of contain it that bit better, that I can relate a bit better now to people. And so when people aren't doing things like boycotting, just, still saying what I want to say and leaving it with them and letting them think about it, instead of like, getting really upset and crying and just like, because
Look,
it's
Audrey, you're here, you're talking to your sister, because I've had the same from my family who had to say, like, seriously, you keep going on and being angry with everybody for not doing things the way you think they should be doing it, you're going to drive
mm,
people away. And
yeah.
it's not because you're like, and then like my mother would be kinder. I know you're coming at it from a good place, but you know,
I know.
and like my dad would just be going, Jesus Christ, he would never be on the streets at all. And yet he was probably more anti-imperialist before I even knew what anti-imperial the word existed. Like,
Mm,
he
mm,
always, during the Iraq War, he knew exactly that this was US. Oh, it's about oil. He could see what was happening with the Good Friday Agreement, the pacification process. Oh, what do you see now? The Yanks will be coming in. Peace never comes that easy. Um, so he wasn't an activist, but he
mm,
he reads history, he reads the papers, and he's got a very much a critical thinking mind, because he even knew when he was in school as a child that it was only the compliant ones who went on and did well, and if you were a bit
mm,
divergent or were cheeky to the teacher,
mm,
that
mm,
slapped and put out and you
mm.
know. So he had that lived experience that made him think more independently than most people I know in my own life. But he has a gruffness to him, so maybe that's where I get it from.
Yeah. You need
Like
it.
blunt, just blunt, and
Mm, yeah.
so that's why I would never make a politician. I don't have those diplomatic skills, because
We don't want a
there's
politician right now,
so
though. We want
much
honesty.
crap. There's so much bullshit. It's from Hollywood, it's from the media. I was,
Mm,
like, I was never into following influencers or things like that, but I did get sucked
mm.
into, somebody give you a self-help book when you were feeling
Oh,
low. Like, I did go, but I was like, what
me.
the hell? It's still not working. I said all those positive affirmations in the morning. And like, I'm still not feeling very happy. Capitalism just hasn't gone away by saying, I love myself.
I know, because I did the same thing.
There's no point me presenting to the world or to you or to anybody as like radical. I wasn't
Mm,
born radical. I wish to God I was.
mm,
But I was very much pacified through the education system. I was one of those ones who was told by the teacher and probably at home as well, look, get an education so that you
mm,
don't end up. Like Paula Meehan writes this beautiful poem. It's about when she first realized she became a poet. And it was when her teacher gave them a big lecture about not working hard enough or they'd end up in the factory. And it always reminds me there was a factory, the Dainty Fit at home in where I'm from in Tyrone, and it made bras for M&S. And we got the same rhetoric from the nuns. If you don't work hard, you'll end up in the Dainty Fit, you'll end up in the factory, as if there was something
mm.
wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah,
Like God,
yeah. Like that it was the worst fate that could befall you to,
like that is
yeah,
the
yeah,
classism. The class. Now
that's
I was
it.
conscious of that. I was
Mm,
conscious of that at the time because, you know, my neighbors worked there. So I was like, what are you? This classification then of you are a better uh, type of person if you don't end up. Think of that term end up.
yeah, yeah, it's awful, isn't it? Like
So I
that
was
that's it.
conscious of
Scrap
that,
heap, scrap heap. It's
scrappy, but I
like,
didn't know
yeah,
how to define it. Like I didn't know what was really going on. And that's what it
mm,
boils down to, which is why the Palestine movement is really important, but it's not owned by the left and it shouldn't be. And I think
this is it. Yeah.
sometimes there's a tendency amongst people to, uh, if everyone doesn't align with every single issue, that
Mm,
the liberal left thinks that is important. Well, they shouldn't be here, you know. So
yeah.
they're pro-life. What are they doing marching at a palace? I'm not standing beside that
Yeah.
pro-lifer.
Now you're talking. This is the crux of it, these kind of issues, because in a democracy, if you support freedom of speech and the right of people to hold their own views, then, you know, you've got to do it in all cases.
Yes.
Um, I may not agree with
I
what you
think it
say,
is
but
that, yeah, Audrey. Like I
yeah.
remember someone confronting me saying, "So you said that you would stand with anybody who is pro-neutrality, so on the neutrality issue with regard to the dismantling of the triple lock, which is imminent." And I had
Mm,
said that in a WhatsApp group, and I was, you know, confronted on the street by a person who took exception to that. And I said, yes, I would. Even
mm,
into, even far right people, I said, yes, I would. On the
mm,
issue of sovereignty, I am not going. How many of us, when we are interacting with people, if you say, I'm only going to go to that shop assistant if they agree, I better check. Are they pro this, pro this, pro this, and anti this, and because otherwise I'm not having an interaction with that person. We don't.
mm,
This is identity politics, not class
mm,
politics.
mm.
And I think identity politics and the culture war has been manufactured very successfully by
Very
the
successfully.
system
Yeah.
to divide us and to keep us separated on these single issues instead of going, this is about the working class and the impoverished and the poor, and we must be united. And that's the common
Hmm.
denominator. That's all.
It is. And we can never get down to that common denominator because we're too busy fighting about other issues. And yeah, like just seeing how manufactured it is. Like the most recent example I saw of that was in right wing spaces and right wing agitators, I would call them online, talking about the fox hunting ban happening and being brought to a vote at the same time as the reform of the Abortion Act. And I suppose people were saying these left wing loonies are trying to ban fox hunting and murder babies at full term. Now, they were giving no context about the fact that current legislation allows termination at any stage if there's a serious medical crisis. Now, the legislation would have proposed change in legislation would have would have changed the parameters of that, but it exists. It exists. That concept of a medical crisis making it so that a pregnancy can be terminated at any point, it already exists. There were just changes being made to it, but none of that was given, and it was like none of that context. It was all stripped out, and it was this really, really simple. Left-wing loonies want to, they care more about fox than they do about babies, and you can see this reduction of these issues and this deliberate manufacturing of division between people on these issues. And like that, it is a circus at times. It is an absolute circus, and there's like missing information on both sides about the other side. You know what I mean? And we can't have conversations because we just, I don't know, we just can't find working class unity in this country. And who does that serve? That's the question that I've started to learn how to ask. Who does it serve that a working class population that is being, or like we're seeing inequality like only sharpen in this country? We're seeing a housing crisis get worse, deteriorate. We're seeing legislation like CETA, where corporations can sue our government if they interfere with their profits. So therefore, the rights of people to earn things like a minimum wage or for that to be increased, the government like loses. I mean, like this government is serving this tiny, tiny elite of people, and we can't focus our attention there, which is the source of all people's problems. And that can be very, it can just seem like a war zone. People are afraid to say the wrong thing. People are afraid to have a political opinion. People are afraid of not knowing all of the facts and being curious and just wanting to actually ask a question. Like, actually, I don't really know what left versus right means. What does that mean? Some people don't know that. And if you haven't had an education on politics, how would you? And terms like neoliberalism or things like that, like we obfuscate, we complicate language. Because like what we were saying earlier, the plainer the language is, the more prohibited it is. Like you're not allowed to call a spade a spade. You can't use the word capitalist or, you know, um, and I just sometimes, we need to really point people's attention at just how much wealth is being siphoned from us and where is it going, and it's not going back into us. And everyone has a story of someone they know and love going to a hospital having an awful experience. Everyone has a story of someone they know who desperately needs services that just aren't there. So that's my wish now, to see that come together. And that kind of leads us on to, if we were to organize and try and attempt to unite the working class, just on the issue of class, purely material improvements for the working class. How could we envision that, you know?
I think we have to find the common main issue, which needs to be an anti-imperialist one.
Mm-hmm.
And right now,
Yeah.
we look at the material conditions in Ireland, and you take on board the awakening that Palestine and the effect it has had on many people, whether they're liberals or whatever, doesn't matter. They might know what they would call themselves. It doesn't matter. That there is an understanding now that US hegemony over the world is serving the interests of a tiny, tiny portion of people. There's also an understanding now, or at least it's out there in the vernacular, of Zionism, maybe not understood because there's different definitions of what Zionism is, and don't even want to go there because that creates more division as well when people disagree on that definition. But there's an understanding, a better understanding of sovereignty, because the word sovereignty
Mm.
has come up. What does it mean to be sovereign? Is Iran sovereign? Is Venezuela sovereign?
Mm.
And how come it's easier to talk about other countries' sovereignty and not talk about our own
Mhm.
sovereignty? Because other words have been used to obfuscate from the reality of sovereignty is our common goal. It must be our common goal if we wish to be independent. Some people
Mhm.
talk about 26 plus 6. Some people talk about future Ireland. Some people talk about 32 counties. Some people talk about all Ireland. All of these words also are a distraction
Mhm.
from the main word, which is sovereignty. And
Mm.
maybe a fear around, and I think we can build on that because if you look at the farmers who were protesting in Athlone last week
Mhm.
against Mercosur, the
Yeah.
Mercosur,
Mercosur. Yeah, that's how I say it too. Yeah.
whatever, um, legislation that is coming in through the
Mhm.
EU.
Mhm.
Again, a lot we could stand back, go, who was that? Who are they? Oh, they're right wing. You know, I'm not going to that. Actually, that's where we should have
Mhm.
been last week. I think.
Yeah.
When I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
I
yeah.
would go
Yeah.
all the places we could have been, because if we don't have a Eurosceptic left,
Mhm.
because if our only criticism of the EU is von der Leyen, that's a very
It's shallow. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not. You can take von der Leyen out. You can take Trump out.
Yeah, the
It
system is still there. The
will
system
still
is
be
still there,
there.
and another puppet will pop up. Um, yeah, 100%. And I totally agree on the farmers. Like they're well able to organize, and yeah, and I suppose the left not being there is a fail.
Yeah.
And you see the likes of, I suppose, Eddie Hobbs then talking about looking for funding from MAGA in the US to start a new political party. And you're kind of like, no, that's the opposite of class consciousness. You know, it's no, you're not empowering anyone. That's anti-sovereignty. You're looking for foreign outside meddling. We can see that happening already in our country. And it's like, yeah, we need to go inward to solve our problems. Definitely not outward. Um, so yeah, I would agree with that too. That we should that should be a huge issue for the left. It is because it does affect us all. And I like when I saw the farmers in France protesting before Christmas into the city centres with their diggers. They were not messing around. They were burning stuff up. They were, they rattled their government's cage. And that's all that they listened to
Yeah.
writing a letter and an email. I remember I do not do that anymore. I have long recognized the absolute futility of it. I wouldn't waste a breath or I wouldn't waste a key stroke sending an email to one of my TDs. But the last one I sent was on Shannon LNG to Cathal Crow. And and it was an uplift one, so it was pre-written for me. So in fairness, there wasn't too much labour in it. But a lot of labour had gone into, what was constructed in it. And he emails back and he says, thanks. I can see you put a lot of time into that. I have to say, I'm for Shannon LNG, and I'm just going to be honest with you. I just like there's
So you're a representative. Whatever you think is irrelevant. You're supposed to represent the people.
yeah, no, it's and you're like there isn't any mechanisms in our democracy to convert all of the public will, and there isn't any way to convert that into policy. It just gets ignored. It just gets ignored. Like, see all the hundreds of thousands of people on the street. How many emails do you think have been sent in the last 2 years? Um, and petitions and protests, like they've just gone completely ignored. We don't even have the Occupy Territories bill, nor will we. Um, what we're getting is the IHRA definition. We soon won't even be able to criticize. We'll be called anti-Semites. Our history books are being reviewed for rewrite by Unit 8200 Israeli spies coming in, talking to our media regulator and reviewing our history books. And you're kind of thinking, shit, we are, yeah. Anyway, um, I think in terms of petitioning politicians, it's not
Yeah.
happening. I think,
Like because that's pretty exhausting. You get your hope up. Like I know. a few times even they've been shared around groups and you wouldn't not share them, whatever people want to do, wouldn't curb
Mm.
that. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't sit down to write one with the view of thinking it's going to make any difference. In some ways, it's sometimes a record of what's
Yeah.
happening in history, but I know I've sent a few around and a few people have said, I didn't get any reply from that. Even my mother, they didn't reply. Did they reply to you? That wasn't really the objective, but you think, oh, God love her innocence, but that she would still have faith in the system,
Yeah.
or even
Yeah.
to think if somebody replied that it did and agreed with you that it would make
Mm.
a peck of difference. The only difference is that it helps sometimes to clarify and to outline what is actually happening, and it's a record there in history.
Yeah, that's important, the
But they
records.
have to
Yeah.
go through the process of realizing this isn't working. It's like when I used to send in, um, look at planning things, like when Dublin City Council would be putting it, but there are a proposal to build a big, private housing thing that was for the vulture funds really facilitating, and you'd be looking
Mm.
through the planning application on the portal and thinking how you can't outsmart the system and you
Mhm.
can't reform it. But as soon
Mhm.
as you know that it's failing, that you have to think of other alternative ways to organise. And also, what is going to be, if you ask me, Audrey, the big thing is sovereignty. And we shouldn't just say,
Mhm.
oh, that's what, and we shouldn't be saying, oh, only the right wing section of society is critical of the EU. We don't want to be seen like we're far right. And we need
Mm.
to look at the health system. We need to look at how things are deliberately run down, whether that's buses not turning up in time for us. See, those small, we think they're small issues. That's
They're
just
not for people who rely on them.
no. And then eventually the people who rely on them go, oh, maybe we should privatise them. Maybe we should,
Mm. It'd
when
be efficient. We can't rely on
when
the government.
we
Yeah.
can get to work on time, okay, I'll pay towards the privatization. It's the same with the water, what happened. Run it down, neglect the services, don't invest, till the people get so fed up of whatever polluted water that eventually they'll think we can convince them that we need to privatize the water. So the same as happened with healthcare. It's shocking down here.
Yeah.
Nearly
A
everyone I
two-tier
know
system.
has healthcare.
Health insurance.
I
Yeah, I
don't.
do too. I wouldn't be without it
Yeah,
because of how things are.
yeah, I don't because in the culture I grew up on, and it was free. So
The
I
NHS.
well
Yeah.
free, but not free actually. We
Because
pay.
you're paying for it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not free at all. But now, slowly, slowly, if you go up to Belfast and you drive along the Malone Road or the Lisburn Road, you'll see private healthcare clinics and hospitals popping up because in those well-to-do areas, if you can get fast-tracked,
Mm, that's it. It's priority. It's priority access, isn't it? It's VIP, VIP. Yeah, and
they're like,
that's
oh, yeah,
stratification
yeah,
on like it's awful. It's and you see Ireland has one of no, it actually has the lowest rate of access to innovative cancer drugs. So the newest cancer drugs on the market, we have the lowest and one of the highest GDPs. But like our GDP needs to be qualified because so much of it gets repatriated to the multinationals who generate it. Um, but still, it's a shocking position in Europe and place to be, and it just shows you the value that the government puts on care towards the illest, the sickest people in society. And these are the kind of things that we need to be talking about that our media is not going to be championing the working class or public interest. I could talk all day on that. But I think what would be good to kind of wrap up to finish with would be a vision for how we would unite. Even hypothetically, what an event would look like where you could get people who are fed up with the government, um, want and know that change is needed, understand that there are no mechanisms in our democracy to convert our will into actual policy change because they've tried, they failed a million times over, and they know, okay, we're just flogging a dead horse here, or we're trying the same thing expecting a different result. It's not going to work. And gathering together and kind of trying to find common ground that can unite us around the core issue that is affecting the world and our country, and that is soaring inequality. Yeah, how do we do that?
You mentioned an event, Audrey. Like
Mm,
I was thinking, I have that. A few people have said to us along the way,
same.
the last two
Yeah.
years, would you organise an event? You know, and
Mm,
we've entertained the thought, and the idea. But you know what I find with events,
mm-hmm,
they actually create more division. An event, because you've got a room full of people
mm-hmm,
debating what is the main issue and feeling
mm,
if you can't agree, first of all, on the main issue. The other thing is not everybody gets to speak. So there are
yeah.
there's never enough time. So the idea of event, I think schools are very important to have,
Mm,
schools running as often as you can, that it wouldn't be a once-off event, but where you would have workshops, where you had places, centres of learning, where the learning is not in the hands of imperialist or corporate power, where
mm-hmm,
the learning comes from real people at a local level, whether they're artists, whether it's through watching a film together. But the most important thing is whatever the event is, that people aren't left to just go home.
yeah.
That's it, it's over.
That, yeah, you're right. It needs to be something that's there for the long term. And you're talking really about local cells,
Yeah,
um, and that they are educational.
yes,
Because the energy at the moment, I guess, has been put, and it's in good faith. People are doing it, but it's not going to work. Like all that energy that's been used for, you know, the marches and vigils and things like that. If we could kind of gather it around education, yeah. Um,
I think the education's the most important thing,
I
because
do too.
you can't agitate. We could agitate, and there has been agitation. There have been things down at the porch. Um, there's been direct action. There's been
Yeah.
agitation. This is not a criticism of that agitation, but if that
Hmm.
agitation is done by people who don't really understand the root
Hmm.
cause, then they're really being put into vulnerable places. And if that agitation is going to agitate the wider population of workers going home and the roads blocked, um,
Mm.
parents going to try to collect their children, if we're disrupting our own people, the workers,
Mm.
if we're annoying them,
Mm.
we're not going to get them on our side. We just look at the
I
loot.
know what you're saying.
So
Yeah.
the agitation needs to come from a place of deep understanding of imperialism. And without that understanding, the agitation will go nowhere. It just
Hmm.
becomes adventurism, becomes performance. And I don't think that's ever the intention. I don't.
Yeah.
And it is
I know what you mean. It's not.
or
Yeah.
there's good energy there, but what did it achieve? So
Mm.
we always need to think, what will be the outcome? And break the academic chains of Zionism. The encampment was dismantled yesterday.
That's right. Yeah.
It was a space where you can't get space anywhere. If I want space in my local community, I'd have to ask the pub, or I'd have to pay for a room or whatever. But that was a proper independent space where the people who attended, the protesters who were defending the camp, could decide without having to ask anybody permission what film they would play. So they put on the Leila Khaled documentary. They put on
Mm.
Hunger, for example, the story of Bobby Sands, the
Mm.
Steve McQueen film. Can you imagine if I want to go across the road to the pub where sometimes we have community meetings? I have to ask permission, number one, and I have to check, are they okay with that film?
Mm.
And so the same with neutrality roadshow. Many
Yeah.
attempts were made to have the neutrality
Yeah.
roadshow in local community centres, and they were told
Yeah,
no.
Roisín, I think it's just flat out no.
Yeah, flat out no.
I think
That was too political. Sorry, it was a little bit of interference there.
no, it was me. My internet was and where were the neutrality group told no? In the local community centre.
Some were told, oh, what is it? So you nearly had to go in with, look, we're just having a bit of a community meeting. It's about the triple lock. You know, there was some people were met with, who's organising it? Are they part of a political party? So it was that kind of gatekeeping and checking.
Yeah.
There's no
Mm.
way that Social Rights Ireland could just walk into any public space.
Mm.
No way.
Mm.
And set up a meeting. I couldn't go to the local community hall and assume that it would be
Mm.
okay for us to have a 1 hour reading group of James Connolly. It would be sign in, what's your name, you know, and
That's bizarre to me. Maybe I'm a bit naive because I've never tried it, but you obviously have experience of this. But that just seems bizarre to me that you would try to book a room, for example, to read James Connolly, and they'd be saying, no, no, that's too political now.
I can't remember the exact locations where the Neutrality Roadshow was met
Yeah.
that needed a clearance, who, where, what, when.
Wow. Wow. That's insane.
But look, it's just
Um,
the unions, Audrey. I'm in a teachers' union, ASTI, and again,
mm,
they won't they don't have a banner, they don't have any opinion on Palestine or the genocide because it's too political. Imagine a union, which is, we're not, imagine anyone saying, any authority saying that's too political.
mm.
So
You're
what's
talking
not?
about slaughter and genocide, and you can just put that label on it, and that absolves you of any responsibility to be a human being.
Look, if it's
Um,
seen as anti-establishment or anti-government, and if these spaces are controlled by compliant people, well, then they'll push
mm,
back and there'll be all sorts of daft, silly excuses and lies, which is why there are things already being organised, Audrey, perhaps by politicians,
mm,
perhaps by community groups that are aligned with certain parties, but there's no reason why they're already being
mm,
organised why we shouldn't be there. It doesn't
yeah.
mean that because we show up that we're just a number for a photo op.
Mm,
We're there and we have to use our voices there. So one big event I don't think
mm.
would change anything. If anything, it might create more disharmony and splits and disagreements, and we get bogged down on, and maybe even history that people have with each other, going, well, the percentage you
Yeah.
might have run in with them 10 years ago. Irish people take a long time to forget. I do
Yeah.
think we need to work within our local communities and set up assemblies, people's
Yeah.
assemblies, and they
In
need
local communities.
always aware of the attempts to co-opt us and make sure that we
Mm,
will never ever fall into the trap of the reformism. There might be a reformer there in that
mm,
space as well, and we can utilize them. Yeah, go to the local council and put that motion before the council. But
hmm.
you're not going to dominate this group. We are a sovereign group, and we want to look at how to have sovereign food, to have our sovereign
Hmm.
healthcare system, a sovereign tech industry, a sovereign energy system that belongs to us, the people. That's what we're about. We're not
Mm,
interested in begging for LNG to be stopped anymore. I'd
yeah.
love to know
Yeah.
about what your experience of LNG, because very few people are even talking about that or about CETA
Mm,
or
mm.
like.
Yeah. How did it come to my awareness? It was kind of, I went down a rabbit hole actually, and it was around data centers. And it was when I first made the connection about Microsoft storing illegally obtained surveillance data from Palestinians. And I was like, holy shit, right here in our doorstep is the technology that is powering that heartless war machine to just strike, like those awful words we'd use, like that gospel or lavender. And that sickened me to my core. And so I started looking into data centers. I hadn't a clue about how much energy they were using. And it was like the drain they were putting on the grid. And that naturally progressed to Ireland's, energy politics and, who's investing in it. And then I realized 650 billion, Ursula von der Leyen, the EU, have agreed to buy from the US and fracked gas. Oh, sure, wouldn't a terminal on the Shannon be very handy now to facilitate the import of that from the US? So, like a good vassal state, here we go again. And this same, like that Sean, what do you call him? That North Kerry MEP now, Sean Kelly, who used to be head of the GA. The talk of him, like trying to sell it to his people, that it'll be great for this, that, and the next thing. And then you see how bad it is on the environment. You see the impact it's going to have. Short term, it'll be the construction of it that'll create jobs. And long term, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It'll destroy the local environment and it will destroy the health of the people around it. And then there's huge other kind of risks about explosions and all sorts. So, and it's all connected. It is all connected. These are being forced on local communities who don't want them. They've been fighting that tooth and nail for a couple of decades now. And they're still going ahead and they're doing it and they're like forcing it. And it's like, we think we live in a democracy where the people's will is just totally and utterly dismissed. And like that email from Cathal Crowe, like, nah, I'm for it. I'm just going to be straight up with you. You're wasting your time.
Short-termism of it as well. But it's great that you came to that understanding, because some people have, I think there's a cohort on the left as well of liberals who own and claim ownership over the environmental movement, and no, it's not rooted whatsoever in class consciousness. So anyone who takes an interest in their local environment is seen as a tree hugger or Green Party or very privileged. Oh, haven't you loads of time to be worrying about the trees? And I'm thinking about how to make ends meet or get to Friday or get up in the morning. So the environmental movement needs a good.
It can be very classist. It can.
Oh, Jesus. I mean, container free, or get your rice in a
keepy cup.
A keepy cup. All of this individual.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like pushing it down on the individual is not the answer. Yeah.
Exactly, like through recycled straws and get ban plastic bags. All of this is a distraction to make us.
The root cause. The US military is the biggest polluter on the planet. It needs to be, and like the environmental movement needs to be rooted in anti-imperialism.
But not at the minute, because I'm
no.
the CETA, no to CETA. Again, it's the same ideas, the same thing of like green capitalism is capitalism. It's for profit, and climate policies are just to distract us from green capitalism. They're to offset all of the horrible outcomes and consequences of even renewable energy. The idea, well, renewable energy for who? Whose interests are being served?
I know, and then you see the investors swooping in. We can't even have a sovereign renewable energy sector. They own the wind, and we sold the wind, we sold the sea. And we saw it's just like, what will we not give away? It's
10 times.
Yes, and pay the highest prices in Europe. I mean, seriously, we're gone so docile. We are gone so docile. And that is like, people just really need to wake up. But I guess it's clarity of messaging, it's education. It's being like all of these issues connect the environmental movement. It needs to be rooted in anti-imperialism. Like, I was going to say about Abby's documentary, why can't I think of her? Empire Files. You know her. She's like an amazing journalist. The American Abby, I'll think of her surname anyway. Her recent documentary about the US military. I've read loads about it. I can't wait to see it. She was doing screenings, but I don't think it's on general release. And I can't wait to see. But I've heard people talking about how no climate activist could take themselves seriously if their number one focus isn't the US military,
Yeah.
because of the sheer amount of fossil fuels it relies on the daily, and the carnage it has wrought everywhere, the ecocide, the damage to the environment. And that needs to be central to anyone who's taking it seriously, who really is taking it seriously. Do you
Yeah,
know?
the word ecosystem means something very different now. Ecosystem,
Mm,
what ecosystem? The ecosystem of the military industrial complex. That's
yeah.
the only ecosystem that they understand, the imperial.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even that word, that's a bold word, because we found that out, when Catherine Connolly, in fairness, she used that word, military industrial complex, and they're like, they'd be slagging her for using it, like as though she's some kind of fringe or whatever. And it's like, it's the reality on the ground. Like, it is the reality, and they're making it sound, oh, the gaslighting can sometimes be a bit transcendent. That's where it's important to kind of that confidence we come back to, and just holding your ground and not letting people tell you that reality isn't the way it actually is. And that can be hard when you're outnumbered,
Yeah.
and you're only going to take crap for it. It can be a lonely place sometimes, but I think we're at the point where we don't really have the luxury of being timid about it anymore,
No, well, look,
because
we
things.
always need a vanguard. I mean, the vanguard, if you look at even, if you read Lenin and see that, the vanguard was whatever, 26,000 out of whatever millions of people in Soviet Russia at the time. You might have thought, sure, there's no chance, we're tiny. Sometimes it's okay to be the small cohort. The vanguard will always be small, Audrey, because
Mm,
you know, and you don't need everybody to be reading revolutionary theory or at all. It's not
yeah.
not about that. Like read this and you're suddenly going to become a revolutionary. Um, Not at all. That's not necessary. But what is necessary is that there's a vanguard who will lead
Mm,
and who do understand so that when the time comes, we
hmm.
are not in a state of chaos, that those who are in a state of chaos
Yeah.
will be able to be directed and led. Right now, if we, think that it's all about creating this mass movement without proper understanding, the anti-imperialist movement is
Mm.
not about turning everybody into an anti-imperialist.
Yeah,
It's
I've got
about
to remind myself of that.
strengthening ourselves. We are a small cohort of people, and it's about ensuring that it's a working class anti.
Mm,
Doesn't make sense otherwise. Can't have an
no.
anti-imperialist left in Leinster House.
Hmm.
That's a contradiction. It doesn't make sense to have
Mm,
anti-imperialist in. Yes, anti-imperialist understanding, but
hmm.
anti-imperialist leaders are this small vanguard, and it doesn't have to be huge, thousands.
Mm, hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I think the key takeaway is education, and the acceptance that it doesn't have to be huge, as long as there is that, like you could call it, vanguard, or and then maybe, I suppose, that channeling into education locally,
Yeah.
education and organizing locally, and integrating in the structures that are there politically, to have a voice and find the voice within there too. Um, yeah, that
Not
makes, yeah.
numbers. I mean, you could have imagine if we said, okay, Audrey, if I said to you, guess what? There's 1,000 people have signed up to our new group and they
Mm,
want to do something, or there's 100,000 people and they're ready tomorrow
mm,
to do what?
mm.
You
Yeah.
give them the order. If they don't know or understand what they're doing, they're just numbers.
Mm,
Whereas,
mm.
we're more than just numbers. It has to be rooted in a deeper sense of analytical understanding. Otherwise, you're going to have further chaos and further division. And get
Yeah.
beyond the nonsense online. I think we need to get offline more and stop
Mm,
taking things to heart and taking things personally when they say
hmm.
throw insults at us. Like you need your armor. Some
Yeah.
the
You
months
need your
are
armor.
tougher than other days. They're like, oh, oh.
I
But
know, yeah.
but overall, but this is not personal. This is not about me.
No, it's not.
You know,
I think, yeah, I think I'm at that stage where I can see that now. The one thing I'd say about leaving online, definitely restrict online, but I'd never leave it because
no.
so many people get all of their information there. I think it's a key battleground for the education side of things.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said that we do need that revolutionary media. It doesn't exist,
Yeah,
never exist on mainstream media. We need to, unfortunately,
no,
these are the only platforms we have. What I mean
yeah,
is sometimes get bogged down in the comments.
yeah.
You
I
know,
know, and I'm guilty of that too. At the start, I used to be writing novels back in response, whether it be sparring with a Zionist or whatever. And then I'm like, what am I doing? I'm so drained,
mhm. Take up all your time. Yeah.
like exhausted. And it's like, why would you argue? And then it's a bot. You realize you're arguing with a bot. And you're like, oh my God, I'm never getting that time back. What have I done?
We've all done that. Yeah, we've all
Yeah, yeah.
done.
But not being dragged into it. But yeah, I think the central message that I'm leaving with is unity across the working class,
Yeah,
uh, not to be distracted, and education and
yeah,
how important it is, and inviting people into that education. Because I mean, I don't think there's many people who can say that at one point they weren't ignorant. You
yeah,
know, it is a path, and you know, it's not a hierarchy, is how I see it. It's a path, and some people will be further along that road than you, and some people will be behind and need your help. So you'll be looking forward to people who you'll consider your mentors, and then you'll be looking to give a hand back to someone who was where you were,
yeah,
um, to kind of bring them on, and to not be intimidated by your place. A place isn't, it's transient. You
yeah,
can move from where you are. Um, but there just needs to be that support there. Um, and access, and warm access. Like everyone is invited, because we're not going to reform this horrible system.
And today's enemies on the street or somebody who you've had a run in might be tomorrow's. Uh,
Exactly.
so
Stranger things have happened, huh?
yeah, and vice
Yeah.
versa. So when it's really, really important to be able to disagree and not take
Hmm.
it personally or get offended or
Mm.
fall out.
Yeah.
Many people
Yes.
just leave things because they go, oh, done with
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
if we can nurture safe spaces for free speech, even
Hmm.
when it's the opposite to what we really believe, there must be room. That's the most important
Hmm.
thing right now is free speech. Once that's
Hmm.
gone, what's left?
I know. That's complete and utter subjugation. Yeah. Roisin, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this chat, and hopefully it'll be the first of many.
Yeah. Thank you, Audrey. I don't think we're that far apart in many ways, maybe
No,
a couple of decades, like, but I mean,
no, we're not. We're
where
the
we've
same age,
come
I'd say,
from
Roisin.
and where
Yeah.
we're going, I
Yeah,
think,
I think we're definitely on the same path. Like I said to you before, I do see you're further ahead in your uh integration of it, and that's why I look to you, and that's why I've said to you, sometimes I'm like, oh shit, that's really powerful, or that triggered me a bit, or because I haven't fully realized something. But like I said, when I take a step back, and I'll kind of go, yeah, no, it's because of my whatever it is, good girl conditioning, or whatever it is internally that's having a response to it. The truth is, it's so important, and it's so rare to see truth unfiltered. And yeah, thank you.
well, thank you, Audrey, for because I often do the questions on Zoom, so it was nice to have a more balanced back and forth. Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you.